Hello everybody, this is Mithril Zenith, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about why it's good for Fire Emblem to have bad units. Bad units come in many forms in Fire Emblem. This is true and about most games. You have units that are trainees or training projects, you have units that join early, join late. Some units like Nino join late with pretty bad stats, but potential. Some units join early with pretty bad stats, and some potential like Ross, even if units like Garcia are technically, like, if you do all the numbers out, they are mathematically superior to Ross. Garcia is. Ross tends to be more fun, and a lot of people use him. I'm going to answer why that is as well, and I'm going to answer why some units like Violin and Roshea exist in FE1, 3, and 11, where they show up as Cavaliers that are worse than Mathis. At the same point, you get arguably the best Cavalier in the game in Hardin, and why that is. So, today I'm going to talk about it. Some of these points have already been made by other YouTubers and other videos. I just want to talk about it myself because I think they all go into the same sort of player theory. And player theory is something that I think not a lot of people mention. Sometimes it might be called player psychology. A lot of different names for it. I'm going to say player theory in this video. Before we get into it though, big shout out to my YouTube channel members. Currently that is C2 Pikali. Thank you for being a LaguzGuard member. If you want to join the LaguzGuard, you can support the channel for less than $1 a month, get access to videos early before they go live, get some premiere access as well, private videos, and some cool chat emotes. So yeah, check it out. Anyway, why is it good for Fire Emblem to have bad units? So often, Fire Emblem games get lambasted for having bad units. Like, take a look at FE6. The cast of FE6 is full of a lot of units that are not very good in general, and oftentimes get so much hate for it that I don't know about any other game, aside from FE6, that has more attempted, quote, rebalancing patches, because so many people try to fix that game when really it's not actually broken. They're just trying to make it into something different because they don't like what it is. And fair, you don't have to like FE6 for what it is, but FE6 is what it is for a very specific reason, and making any changes to it makes it no longer FE6. But anyway, we're not talking about FE6 yet. That's a video for the future. We're talking about units. So, why is it important for Fire Emblem to have bad units? First of all, Fire Emblem has units for short, mid, and long-term goals. Oftentimes, people say, yeah, use your Jagan, use your pre-promote, use your promoted units, focus on 1 or 2 training projects, you know, basically a lot of common advice, especially in the optimization crowd for Fire Emblem, optimization and efficiency, is to use a small number of units, train them, put as much EXP as possible into them, and pretty much just use them and only use other units for like small tasks, helping to rescue drop, killing 1 or 2 enemies that are far away, doing some other niche thing, stuff like that. And so, why is it important for some units to be bad and just not fit in with efficiency at all? People often hate a lot of units because they don't fit into efficient game plans, because they take extra effort to reach what is deemed as the same level, because they're just not mathematically correct options. And as the Fire Emblem community has grown and evolved and played these games hundreds, if not thousands of times, we've come to conclusions about units that very much add up to, well, if it's not optimal, don't do it, and have successfully taken the fun away from ourselves. So, short, mid, and long-term goals. Units provide you with short-term goals. You want to level them up. You want to see that EXP bar hit max. You want to get to the next weapon rank. Those I would say are short and sometimes midterm goals. Stuff like, hey, I want to get to A rank staves for warp access on my promoted sage who has C rank staves. I'd say that's a midterm goal. Like, hey, you're going to be using them in a different way than how you otherwise would just to make sure that you hit that goal. That's important. Short-term goals. I want to level up. I want to level up this unit. I want to give this unit this kill. How short you want to make them, you can break that down. Goals subdivide very well. I talked about this in my video on Terraformers and why I like that game so much, because you have so many goals. It's like, yeah, if you look at your greater goal, the long-term goal of hitting your point limit or whatnot, it's going to seem impossible. But if you break it down into smaller and smaller goals, every one of those goals feels impactful, feels rewarding, and you just get some joy out of achieving those small goals. So, having units that are easy to level up, are easy to see grow, having units that really do make good use of your experience or your time and grow over time, this is very good for the game. So it's very good to have units that are generally considered weaker, especially if they're lower level and level up quickly. So units like Ross or Amelia or Donnell or Engage, Anna, and John. It is very good for those games to have these units, not because they are the strongest units, not because trainees are somehow amazing units out of the box, not because they don't take effort to invest in, but because investing that effort into them is fun. Investing effort into units that are weak, that you get to grow and train, is fun. That was the whole point behind Three Houses, is that you would invest in pretty much all your units, aside from a couple of them, and that you got to see them go from 0 to hero with your entire army. That was the whole point of Three Houses. Every system was built with that in mind, and for what it's worth, Three Houses was the best-selling Fire Emblem game of all time. It blew everything out of the water, and yes, that was a confluence of events, but a lot of people really enjoyed that. A lot of people really enjoyed that aspect, and they got very, very invested into their particular units. And speaking of investment, that's another reason why bad units or weak units are very important. Because we invest in what we love, and we love what we invest in. It's a two-way street. I don't think a lot of people picked up Sacred Stones, saw Ross, and said, man, I absolutely love this kid, I'm going to invest in him. I think some people definitely did, but I don't think that's everyone's experience. I think some people's experience was, I'm going to invest into this unit, see how it goes, and then if it turned out great, they'd say, oh yeah, I love my Ross, I invested so much into him and he's done so much for me. Sometimes you invest into units and they don't turn out great, and you're like, I hate my Ross, he doesn't have any speed, but at least you have a cool story to tell that you're constantly arguing with this little bunch of pixels on why his speed is stuck at 5 for so long, you know? So, personal stories and connection, investing in what you love and loving in what you invest, these are all very strong psychological reasons why Fire Emblem needs to have trainees, or weak units, or training projects. This is not gameplay, this is not game, like, this is gameplay, but this is not game balance. This is not saying this unit is a tool that solves this problem. This is saying this unit attracts this mindset of player, attracts this type of fun, this type of engagement, and it's important to have multiple avenues, multiple angles, multiple types of engagement for a game to be a holistic experience. If you have a game that really only engages you on one core front, then dang, that core front better be the absolute best it can possibly be. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of frustration. I think an easy example for Fire Emblem would be Conquest. Fire Emblem Conquest engages so much in people's desire to optimize the game, to really strategize around it, to really push the limits of what the Fire Emblem engine can do. And I think that there's a lot of good about having an opportunity for a game like that, But I really think it would be bad if every Fire Emblem game were like that, and just pushed super hard on one avenue the entire time. Because then you're missing out on so many other people, not just potential players, this is not just a marketing standpoint, but so much other avenues of discussion, realms of discussion. If you're talking Conquest, you're only really talking about either the gameplay, or you're laughing at the story about how it doesn't make sense or doesn't work, or you're one of those people who try to defend Corrin with your life, but, you know, we all have our issues. I think that if you have a game that's more rounded, even if none of the experiences are truly outstanding, it can still be important to have these opportunities for people to engage with the game through other means and ways. And yes, I know this is talking just about units and having weak units, but having weak units is not just a mechanical trap. It's not just a, hey, you made a mistake, point and laugh. Having weak units is important to provide texture for the experience. I've said this about Fog of War, I've said this about different map objectives, and I'll say this about having bad units and good units. Texture is very important. If everything you do feels the same, then you're just ending up with what happens when you max level everyone in Tower of Volney. All your units end up feeling the same, they just move a little bit different and use different weapons. What really shines is when you have good units, when you have bad units, and when your good units are not strong enough to do the whole game themselves, then you have to rely on the bad units to do at least something. It's why sometimes the early game of certain games, like Awakening, can be really engaging, because you're relying on these units that can't do anything to just do one thing right. Please, Virion, just hit this guy one time. Please, Frederick, just dodge this hammer one time, you know? Rely on your units to do one thing right, and it provides not necessarily a great experience every time, but it's definitely a memorable one. And speaking of memorable experiences, engaging with randomness, engaging with the systems of randomness. Far too often we talk about Fire Emblem as if it is purely formulaic and purely mathematically deterministic. And while you do have fixed modes for Path of Radiance and Engage, where the growths are not randomized, the growths are static and set to a specific track, although Path of Radiance is a little bit weird on that, check out my video on that. It is very important for these games to exist in those fashions because, well, no, it's very important for the randomness in the game to happen, and for bad units to exist in games with random level ups, to encourage people to use them on the potential chance that they might be good. For instance, how many people used Nino? How many people used Amelia just because you get a unit that's so much worse at base than what you're starting out with, and then you just have to hope that they turn out better? And how many people have played Fire Emblem 7 and tried to raise Nino and got pretty bad level ups on her, and it just kind of sucked? How many people tried to play Fire Emblem 8 and tried to use any of the trainees and got bad level ups on them, and then they just did not grow the way you wanted them to? But on the other side, how many people started using one of these trainees, got, 6, 7 levels really quickly, and each of those levels, you got like 3 of them are like perfect levels, and this just became this god tier unit, head and shoulders above everyone else, almost like within a single map. That system kind of engages the same brain chemistry as gambling at the lottery, though not nearly to as an extreme of extent. But it's still a very fun avenue to explore in a game that allows it. And I think one of Fire Emblem's greatest strengths is that randomness, and is that fact that every time you play, things are going to be a little different, because your stories are just going to be different, because the units are going to grow differently, because the items you use are going to be different, because the crits you get are going to be different. Yes, you can solve these games. Yes, they are formulaic to an extent. Yes, you can rig the RNG, you can do all these things. You can ruin the fun for yourself all you want to optimize the game and just to complete it. You can complete the game, you can check it off your list, you can do what you want to do, and the game allows you to do that. But the game also allows you to see what happens and roll the dice. You can try with these horrible, awful units and just see what happens. And the last point I wanted to make is that bad units, sometimes they're just bad. Sometimes they don't get better. And sometimes that's still okay because they highlight other units as better. Fire Emblem 6, I think I talked about earlier, it could have been an earlier take for the video, has so many rebalancing patches trying to make bad units good. But the point of Fire Emblem 6 is that bad units are bad to make the good units you get really shine. How many people absolutely fall in love with using Rutger or Milady or Percival just because they show up and are head and shoulders above any of your other units by that time, or at the very least are units that are joining with comparable stats to your best units at that time. Those units would not have nearly the same magic if your other units were better. If you had better Cavaliers and more Knight's Crests, then you wouldn't have the same magical feeling of finally recruiting this legendary Knight Percival, this paladin who you've seen all around all the time. You wouldn't have that magical feeling if Marcus and Zealot were just already at that tier by that time, if their growths were really good, and if they were basically, Seth 2 and Seth 3. You wouldn't have that feeling of magic with Percival. If all your flyers were bulky and strong and whatever else, you wouldn't have that magical feeling of getting Milady for the first time and being like, okay, this is my unit, this is a great unit. If all your units were super accurate and were able to kill the bosses and high value targets no problem, you wouldn't feel that magic of getting Rutger and saying, hey, I have a massive crit chance on a unit that hits reliably and doubles? Heck yeah, let's do this. Having weak units matters because it gives texture and highlights the strong units more. Going back to Hardin and Roshea and Violin, Roshea and Violin exist to make Hardin stand out as better. He's supposed to be the captain, he's supposed to be the unit you're giving the Silver Sword to, which doesn't work in Shadow Dragon because they split weapon ranks. He's the unit that is... He's supposed to be this grand figure who's like second only to Marth in terms of how much he's gonna help you out in saving the country, in saving Arcanea. He's supposed to be that savior of Arcanea, and so having him next to a bunch of effectively base Cavalier stat Cavs highlights the fact that he is head and shoulders above the rest of them, that he is this leader of the Liberation Force, or whatever it is. And it highlights him as the game's way of saying, hey, use this unit. We're giving you 5 units, but here's one unit you'll definitely want to use. That we definitely want you to use. And I think it's just really important that we talk about this. That we talk about this not in the sense of, oh, these units are so bad, why are they so bad? But, yeah, no, these units are so bad because they're pointing to the better units to use. And also, by that same note, wouldn't it be cool if Roshea surpassed Hardin? It then kind of gives that extra impetus to, well, if you want to have your own story, if you want to really push this drama, you can. Go for it. We invite you to. It's not likely to happen, it probably won't, but also, who knows? It's Fire Emblem, it's a game with permadeath. What if you're playing an Iron Man and, ooh, Hardin dies, and somehow Roshea is your last Cavalier? Well, you have to have Roshea step up and be the man, because Hardin can't do it anymore. He's dead. You know? And it's these things with, like, permadeath, with unit randomness, unit growths, and whatnot. Every system that was initially conceived in Fire Emblem, or at least most systems that were initially conceived in Fire Emblem, work together to make a more engaging experience. And by flattening the curves and taking out these pain points, you're also taking out a lot of the high points and a lot of the enjoyment. So I just wanted to talk a bit about this, talk about trainee units. I know this is a little bit rambly of a video, it's not super scripted, I just had some bullet point notes. But let me know what you think about trainees and bad units in the comments down below. Do you think it's good for Fire Emblem units to be bad? Do you think all Fire Emblem units should be great? What do you think the line for usability is? I know I talked about that in my Sophia video, but having a unit that's under the line of usability for so long is very frustrating. Though at the same time, I don't hate Fire Emblem 6 for giving us Sophia in her form, because it does kind of add to the mystery of this unit, and it's like, why is she so bad? Could there be something good that comes out of this? And I think it just drops the ball by making the answer no. But, anyway, that's my thoughts. Leave a like, comment down below if you have any other interesting Fire Emblem thoughts that you think I might want to discuss. Leave them down below as well. Join the Discord if you haven't, links in the description. Sub to the channel, do all that stuff. Till next time, this is MrL Zenith, signing out.